Drum roll. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Wind Reel and Print. My name is Kevin.
And I'm Ryan.
And today we're very excited to bring you along on our kind of journey through the genre of mumblecore.
Mumblecore? What's that? I will admit, I didn't know what mumblecore was before this. The more I've talked to people, the more it seems like people have heard of this term, and maybe I just was kind of out of the loop.
Sure, yeah.
Which is kind of funny, but...
I mean, in general, it is one of the more obscure genres, I would say.
Yeah.
So you're not, like, lonely in that sort of experience. But yeah, generally... either people know about it and love it or have never heard of it whatsoever. Because I've had people ask, like, what is that? I've never even, like, registered.
Yeah, what the heck are you doing, Kevin? Talking about this thing that no one will be able to relate to. But it's worth it.
I think it's, I mean, it's a great niche thing to talk on. And to me, looking into the history of it, I feel like it is very important to the landscape of cinema today. Just in terms of like recalibrating historical film movements for filmmakers today, you know? And so we'll kind of get into that in like the history and stuff. But my entry point into mumblecore is Greta Gerwig, who is probably the most well-known and most prolific filmmaker out of this group. If you watch a lot of her press junkets and like her interviews, she's kind of known as the queen of mumblecore. Yeah. She's kind of like the center point of this whole movement, if you can call it that. So it was on my radar. I just had never engaged with it as like a topic. Yeah. But for those who don't know, mumblecore is a subgenre of independent cinema, quoting Wikipedia here, characterized by naturalistic acting, sometimes improvised dialogue, low budgets, and an emphasis on dialogue over plot, mainly focusing on personal relationships of young people. So I guess going into it, I think you have to look at mumblecore as like a youth movement in the mid-2000s, early to mid-2000s, where pretty much some young filmmakers who don't have access to big budgets or a lot of gear are kind of pinholed into using what is at their accessible whatever.
What's at their disposal.
Yeah, what's at their disposable.
Reset, folks.
We're cutting that one out.
Respect. Stay in the zone.
We're locked in.
We're locked in.
Whatever's at their fingertips, you know, just making what they can make with what they have. Yeah. Literally using each other, their friends, and who they know, but also the equipment that like is affordable and accessible to them at that time. Because a lot of these are college kids or college graduates who are broke, you know. This is during the financial crisis, you know, so...
Oh, that's a really good point, yeah.
Yeah, you have to consider that, like, they didn't have the same opportunities as, like, young filmmakers from, like, the 70s or 60s, you know.
Yeah.
So, I guess I wanted to look at the origins of mumblecore and, like, how this kind of movements get started and look at kind of the early... era of it. So to kind of build the narrative for everyone, the mumblecore movement technically was never a concerted effort. It was never like a group of people coming together and like building a thing, kind of like German expressionism, right? It was just kind of happening out of industrial pressures, like industry pressures. So in 2005, you have 3 films screen at South by Southwest. And this film festival is often credited as like that venue that pushed mumblecore because these films weren't up to Sundance standard. So some other place had to take them. And South by kind of like supported them and pushed them into like this kind of relevance, right? So you have 3 films Sorry, I don't have it at my channel.
I
The Mutual Appreciation by Andrew Bujalski, The Puffy Chair by Mark and J. Duplass, and Kissing on the Mouth by Joe Swanberg.
Those all were at South by Southwest at the same time?
Yep.
Wow, that is really crazy, actually.
Yeah, so it was...
Puffy Chair and Mutual Appreciation just seems so interesting to put those...
together,
together, because they inform... like
very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
But still, obviously, both are so mumblecore.
Yeah. Like in a broad... So that was what was interesting is that you have like all these movies that are kind of similar, but like not obviously of the same origin, but they're kind of scratching at a similar thing. And so in passing at a bar, a sound editor came up with the term mumblecore in reference to like the kind of dialogue heavy stuff that was going on between these three films. And then it kind of caught on in articles and in interviews, and it kind of became the identity of this group. And so, yeah, I feel like that's using that as a center point. I wanted to look at the early beginning, which was Funny Haha, Andrew Bujalski's first film in 2002. It's kind of looked at as the first mumblecore movie. And then looking at Mutual Appreciation and The Puffy Chair from 2005 as like the pinnacle or the kind of the first origins.
Yeah.
The first time we recognize it as a whatever critic. And then looking at Joe Swanberg's collaboration with Greta Gerwig with 2008's Nights and Weekends,
which feels very much like the start of
the future, the next movement.
Because Francis Ha is another like really great example that I'm not going to get into necessarily here, but
totally,
which we definitely need to get into.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a great conversation about it.
Yeah, I was like hesitant about including it initially, but after watching all these, I'm like, that's what that is.
Yeah,
like they colored that experience for me in a new way, and I've seen it now twice. Again,
not surprising.
Yeah, because it's like scratching an itch.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I kind of want to get into how mumblecore is the precursor to independent cinema today, or is a precursor to independent cinema today, and how it's kind of opened doors for a lot of filmmakers that we know and appreciate as like the top echelon of our industry now. But we'll get to that at a later point.
Oh yeah.
In the episode. But first, let's just go to the beginning,
Sweet.
I think Andrew Bujalski is such an interesting figure in the group.
Mm-hmm.
He is very like significantly different style-wise from these other filmmakers.
Yeah.
First and foremost, he shoots on film, which I think creates a different like production process like altogether.
It makes it, and I think both of us just have a lot of respect for film, the medium, and I even know like love cinematic noise, and I just love like
the grain.
The grain is hot right now.
Yeah,
so hot right now. I wouldn't necessarily say it's so hot, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it like both Funny Haha and Mutual Appreciation just feel like art.
Yeah.
More than these other movies do in some ways. They just feel so real, and I saw them in a really high quality too. Like the Mutual Appreciation I saw was like 4K,
really nice.
Ultra HD. It's like so amazing. It's sad that the Puffy Chair can't increase in quality at all.
It's without there.
Yeah, without AI, like some sort of like crazy like where you find a way to add quality to it.
Yeah.
It was shot poorly
on purpose. Yeah.
Because that's what they could afford. But I'm happy Andrew Bujalski could afford to use
like real
equipment.
Cool.
And Funny Haha,
even it's only 16. It's still 16 millimeter, but even then it has like an edge on the rest of these films because of just that aesthetic.
Yeah, there's something just so amazing about that aesthetic. But like this Funny Haha felt like a student film in a lot of ways. It felt like the best student film I've seen.
Yeah.
And it has so much promise in it too. Not that I'm saying like it needed to hit on anything,
Yeah.
That's the other thing about these, and I'll say it especially about this. I don't have like a lot of complaints because it just feels like real life.
Right.
And that I think is the really cool thing about the mumblecore genre.
Right.
And like, so this, like, the things about Funny Haha that I dislike is like how the characters act.
Right.
But that doesn't, like, that's not a commentary on
they're
the
shitty
film.
people.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like,
yeah.
go get some therapy. I'll say that about all of these films. Like, it's just like, please just get a little therapy. Like, we can just say how you're feeling.
Right. It's definitely encapsulating the cringiness of being in your 20s and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel it. And I wonder how I would have felt watching these when I was, like, closer to those ages.
Yeah, totally.
But even now, like, looking back, I still feel it as like a 32-year-old.
Yeah, and I mean, you can still, you're transported to that time. And I think that's why I love Frances Ha so much, is because that's exactly the premise of that film, is like these weird interactions that like you kind of stumble through your life, sort of a thing, that all these films are doing. One thing with Bujalski specifically, more than like these other films, because he's shooting on film, I think he almost deserves more credit, if that makes sense, because I don't know, I guess there's merit in Joe Swanberg's like improvisation and like the Duplass Brothers like kind of indie mindset with a lot of their stuff, but because Bujalski's shooting on film, it requires more forethought and intention and like rehearsal and scripting and like pre-planning to get that same level of like naturalism within that like mode of construction. That is amazing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That's such a good way to think about it, because like, and I don't want to like throw the word sloppy on these other films,
right?
But it makes it less sloppy to be like, and like trusting the process even,
right,
and letting it just like fall where it may,
right.
And I think a lot of movies that shot on film, even big movies, kind of had to do that too, because you kind of had to like shoot it, and in a lot of ways you couldn't watch it back immediately, and you have to like trust that that shot was in focus. A lot of times it wasn't in a lot of those things, and it has that really cool quality of just like, all right, we're shooting on this medium that is finite and real and analog,
and like there you can't be so flippant with your takes. You have to be very precious with like what you're shooting and stuff, especially as a young broke filmmaker. You can't just shoot infinite amount of film. So I think like to achieve the same level of naturalism as these other movies without the crutch of improvisation and digital cameras, like I think that's an achievement on its own.
It's crazy.
I love Funny Haha. I almost felt like Frances Ha is like a ripoff of this movie. Like in some ways, like even in the name, but also just like, and I guess you see that a lot in mumblecore movies, is like these like awkward characters like stumbling through their relationships and like fucking everything up for themselves. So
and I mean, Kate Dollenmeyer, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. Like, I mean, like, and seeing mutual appreciation and knowing that I think she's like a professor now or is involved in some sort of film preservation or something like that. I mean, I don't know if she was acting. You know, like that's the other thing. Like,
just herself.
This might just be like, and that's kind of how it feels with Greta Gerwig too. Sometimes, like it feels like there's that kind of like quirkiness to them. So but it just feels like, wow, Kate really set the standard here.
Oh, totally.
Of like what was going to come and what a mumblecore thing. Just like I think Puffy Chair does that too.
Sure.
And has like a lot of like taking
the erraticness.
And doing a little more of a male perspective on it too.
For sure. Yeah, there is a distinctness within the gender, I think. Yeah, that maybe I hadn't recognized before. But yeah, I guess that there is a certain like, even in like Funny Haha versus Mutual Appreciation, there's like there's some differences there, right? With the characters and stuff.
Yeah, that one is so toxic male.
Yeah.
All over the place. It hurts so bad to watch.
I think that was my favorite of the bunch.
That's mine as well.
Yeah, just formally, it's so awesome. It's black and white, 16 millimeter, which has its own thing, versus color and stuff.
So beautiful.
And then, the characterization is so painfully real, and like I think we were talking about this earlier, like we know people who are like this. Like it's almost like inherent for a musician type to like be this toxic and like kind of crazy with and haphazard with their life. So yeah, definitely related.
Yeah, that movie definitely we'll get to mutual appreciation soon.
Yeah.
I think something Funny Haha did that I would come to realize that all of them end up doing is they end really abruptly.
Sure, yeah.
Like there is just like this getting out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might have a lot to do with just like letting the scene play out the way it's going to play out.
Right.
And it's just the way it is. Like, oh, we're finished now.
Right.
But it also has this wonderful quality that these movies have, which is that the story is not over. You just don't get to watch the rest of it.
Right.
Like, this is the part we filmed, but life, because this is just life, it will keep going.
Right.
And I get that from whatever. It just feels like they just shut the door on me real quick and I can't get back in.
Right.
It has that quality. I don't know.
Yeah, I read something in relation to Altman, and maybe it was the teleology thing, but something about like story just not really having an ending, like just I forget exactly what it was, but I like that idea of like you kind of move through this world and then you kind of sit at the end and there is no conclusion. The movie is the conclusion, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where a lot of these films, I get that feeling too, of just like, we're kind of just here, capturing this moment of a person's life, especially at the crux of their like personal conflict and stuff.
Yeah.
And that they're like, as in real life, you don't get like a grand conclusion at the end of your 20s, where you're like, aha, I realize now what I fucked up on.
Yeah,
like,
I even think she was making a mistake at the end. Like, I don't think she's gonna like. I think that having a relationship with that guy and however that's gonna
was like the wrong choice.
Really bad. It's really. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
There's a number of those throughout. It's just like, please, and I think Puffy Chair does a really good job of
same thing
of doing it differently. Because in the
it.
end, it's them going away from each other, which
in
I think was just like I was just like, oh, it was a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
But to talk on like abrupt endings, there is something that movies like when a movie ends what I'd say quote unquote early. Like it never feels as bad as when a movie stays too long.
Sure.
Like that's such a sin is to stay way too long. And like it feels just more artistic and nice to just
wrap it up.
To wrap it up. And that's another thing that's great about these movies. Mutual Appreciation being the only outlier. They're all short.
Sure.
And there is like a shorter movie is more often than not, in my opinion, a better movie.
Yeah.
Because you're just getting
I agree.
You're getting it done.
Yeah.
You're getting out, like less fluff. Like we're getting to the real nitty gritty. And then to end early too is also just like, this is insane.
Yeah. To really like stick to your guns and like cut out. Yeah, I think that's a bold choice.
It is. Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I think it's so good. Like I would say I think movies tend to be better short.
Yeah.
I think that is.
And I think. Sorry.
No. Just to finish it, like, but I do love long movies. It's basically. Yeah. I'm not gonna talk shit on like some of the best 3-hour movies out there.
I mean, there's a time and place, right?
Yes.
Like I think when you.
Oh, can you imagine these as 3
as an
hours?
epic.
A Chitty Chitty Bang Bang style.
Yeah, holy shit.
Oh, wow.
That would be uncomfortable because I think that's part of it, right? Is these things objectively are of lesser formal quality. And the characters are like the worst fucking people that
Yeah.
you don't want to hang out with these people for more than an hour and a half anyways. So I think
they don't want to hang out with you.
Yeah,
like there's like they want to leave.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like that's kind of part of it is like, you know, not, you don't want to overstay your welcome in like in terms of like boring your audience, but you also don't want to like over exert yourself, you know, like in terms of like assaulting your audience too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these films do feel like emotional assault because it is like hitting on things that make you uncomfortable and like feel awkward and
Yeah. I saw a really good thing in here where it was talking about some more of the and by from here I'm talking about Wikipedia, which is good for like
for this
for a lot of these things. But it was talking a little bit about some of the influences for mumblecore. Obviously, there's a number of different things, and now I'm really interested to watch like Dogma 95 or
Dogma 95. Yeah.
Like the fact that influences it is very interesting to me. And Lars von Trier being one of the people involved. But
well, do you know about Dogma 95?
I don't actually.
Yeah. So I also find this movement interesting, but it is very like culty. I don't know. I won't say that.
Yeah.
It's basically that is like a film movement, like traditionally, in that they had a manifesto. They were like a group.
Oh, it's that
and
kind.
It was like in so much where like when you made like their movies are titled Dogma 1, Dogma 2, Dogma 3. Oh my
God, wow.
Well, they have normal titles, but they'll like serialize their films. Like if you make a Dogma movie, you get added to the collection. Like Harmony Korine made a Dogma movie and then got added to the thing, like officially. So it's like very rigid, I guess. But they had very hard and fast rules. Like if you broke any of them, you couldn't be added to the list. So it was like no equipment, like all natural light, like no camera rigging. Like there was really like
interesting
stringent rules on like the mode and process of filmmaking. And they wanted it to be like super independent. They were almost reacting against new wave in some regards too, in some aspects.
Yeah.
But more so like Hollywood and like normal stuff.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so you get like they were in the 90s and stuff, so they were post new wave. So you could see the lineage from like new wave and Cassavetes to Dogma to this movement because they're all essentially using same principles, you know, shooting on the streets, shooting with natural light, or aiming for naturalism in the aesthetics, in the acting, in the writing and everything. You know, you're not using big actors so much. You're using like real people.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I like it.
And it's fun. You know, I think that was another thing is like you're breaking the mold of like the seriousness in film, if that makes sense. Like if you look at a blockbuster movie, the characters are like taking themselves very seriously.
Yeah.
I feel like in independent film, there's like breaking down of that like artifice too, in terms of acting. Like the idea of like, oh, they're acting natural or they're real people. Like they're just being less serious. Like they're just breaking away from what you would think characters in a movie are acting like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I think there's something interesting there that it's not so much like a natural thing. It's almost, it becomes its own artifice too. Like if that makes sense. Yeah. Well, I don't know where I got there. Oh, Dogma. The influences of this thing. Yeah.
I also, another interesting influence was the original Office.
Yeah, like reality TV.
Yeah, reality TV
is
being
like a
one,
big thing.
and the real world being oh my God, the fact that one critic called and used this descriptor for MTV's The Real World, the spring break psychodrama, which is just like, whoa, I never really thought about it like that. But
it's true.
Yeah, it's interesting how those, and I see the connection with like the original Office.
Sure.
Definitely, of just like
the
really,
crash zoom.
Yeah, and just being awkward. Like it's just like there's something about just like sitting in uncomfortableness.
Sure.
That just and really trying to achieve some semblance of realism.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something that these movies love to make my skin crawl.
Yeah.
I'm just begging for the scene to change in so many cases.
It's just making me think now, what we do in the shadows maybe is mumblecore.
Interesting. I mean, it feels very stylized though.
Yeah, very stylized, but
yeah,
like in an effort to find a mumblecore fusion genre thing.
Actually, I think Taika Waititi has that kind of mumblecore-y.
Yeah, like the acting and the characters.
Yes.
It feels
now that
like,
I think about it, yeah.
Yeah.
In look, not so much, but definitely in just like characterizations of just like, I'm just a regular guy. And just
exactly.
And I also do this thing, and it's a fun play on that actually.
Totally.
Cool. Yeah. That's a good one.
Like using mumblecore artifice within a genre film.
Yeah. I wasn't on board, but now I am.
Yeah, arguing yourself into it. Yeah,
I found it. I love when I do that.
Yeah, wait, no.
No.
Totally. I mean, yeah, because they're both obviously like reality TV things, so I feel like they're pulling from similar things.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously not totally mumblecore, but yeah, you can make an argument. Yeah, funny haha.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that's like the first movie, 2022, out of this movement.
Yeah. It is.
Just feels so like, controlled and like, it knew what it was doing.
Yeah. There was some. It just. I mean, I feel like it just feels like a movie that should have always existed, and maybe that's just because like it really fits that Cassavetes frame in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That just feels like a place that was like that Cassavetes certainly helped like kind of create and build that just exists in the film industry. And will always exist, like you said, with like Dogma 95 and everything. Like, there will always be a place for budget constraints. And a look, and there's always at a certain point, just like art, it happens in this too. Like there's always a jump back to realism, as they are just kind of like, why don't we do that? Why are we trying so hard? Why are we doing this in this way?
Yeah.
And so to me, it just was like, oh my God, of course this movie exists. I feel like I've seen it in a way, or I've always seen, but at least I've been seeing mimics of it. For sure.
Definitely feel like we need to go back to this. Like as a society.
Yeah. The good thing is like that
it'll always be there.
Exactly.
There's always room for these types of films because young people will always need some sort of film to like make.
Yes.
And I think that's what like I love about indie cinema is like it's developing an aesthetic and production process that allows young and marginalized and broke filmmakers to make films that are interesting and appealing without breaking the bank sort of deal.
That might be a perfect transition to our next one, which is very clearly not breaking anyone's bank.
Yeah.
This is the Puffy Chair, 2005 American Mumblecore road film.
Yeah.
Which is great. Written and directed by Jay and Mark Duplass.
Yep.
Starring Mark Duplass. And another South by Southwest. Also, another just interesting thing is that Netflix was involved, and this is like
their first feature film acquisition.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Historic. Yeah. I think it kind of strengthens Netflix's ties with independent cinema.
Yeah.
Right. Like, kind of showing how they've been dedicated towards this movement sort of thing. Yeah.
And they used to be like a company that like would take bets a little bit.
Right.
It feels like where they're less and less so now.
Yeah. They've been corporatized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those sad realities, just like I think A24 is too. Like there was something and then eventually it just becomes too big for its own britches.
The data machine takes over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this one obviously just a very simple shot on digital camcorder.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. But it was digital, and you can tell. It is ugly as all hell.
Potato.
Yeah, it is shot on a potato. It's a perfect way to represent it. But I liked it a lot. And before I had watched Mutual Appreciation, I had really I was like, oh yeah, this one feels like it
Mumblecore.
It feels Mumblecore. It feels just really enjoyable.
Yeah.
Another one where I'm just the characters were so hard to be around.
Yeah.
And it's just. But what was good was that, especially for a time when I feel like there's some really bad
male representation.
Like, he is not a good character.
Yeah.
But I don't think the movie tries to pretend he is.
Right.
Either. Like, because in the end, I think because in the end of this one, Mark Duplass and Katie Aselton. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Assholeton?
Assholeton.
Holy shit.
But they, Katie and Mark, and the whole road trip is supposed to be them kind of getting closer together, but then they pick up Mark's brother in the film. And it ends up kind of being another like look in their relationship, and it already wasn't going so good. But the movie does an amazing thing at the end, they don't stay together.
Right.
Like, it's so nice, and he doesn't get rewarded for being a piece of shit the entire movie.
Right.
He is rewarded slightly for being a piece of shit because he's just a piece of shit to that guy who was supposed to have the right puffy chair.
Right.
Like, there was something like him just being a total douchebag
does
work out in the end for the purpose of the story, but the fact that he didn't win in the end or get exactly what he wanted felt better than what feels like movies were doing at that time.
I don't know. That is an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I wholly agree with a lot of those statements.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he doesn't want the relationship right? I don't know.
I see what you mean.
Like, I don't feel like he actually wanted to be in that relationship.
He just didn't know it, kind of.
He just didn't want to have that conversation of like breaking up or deciding or whatever, right? Because even like in that...
I think you're right, actually.
In the dialogue with his father, he's like, how do you know, blah, 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 like asking all these questions. And then to him, it felt like, oh, I don't think I actually want this sort of a thing. And even in the conversations between her and Mark, there was a clear miscommunication between what each person wanted, you know?
Yeah.
She obviously wanted to be in a relationship and he didn't give a fuck. Like, it was almost like, girl, like, get yourself out of this thing. Like,
this is bad.
This is not your man, you know? Why do you keep pushing this idea of marriage onto this? But also, to kind of contradict that too, this felt like the only movie from the bunch where I felt like he could have changed. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense.
I don't think he changed at all.
Yeah.
Did he?
No, I don't think he ever comes to that realization that you want him to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm an asshole, like I'm not good. But for whatever reason, like him more than the other protagonists that we have in this bunch, I almost was sort of hoping that he would, or like was thinking that he had some capacity to, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's like within Mark's acting or the directing or the writing, but to me, I was like, oh, I could totally see him coming around. Like, I know it might not happen, but I could see an ending where he comes around and like makes it work. And like, even though she's breaking up with him in the end, I almost thought he would fight back against that and like make it happen.
Yeah.
But
he's just as much of a loser.
Yeah.
And just like lets the world... And maybe...
Exactly.
I think I misread, or at least even misremembered, she got out at the end, and I think that was a win.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I felt so like positive about the ending, was like,
sure,
thank God she's gone. But I
she
think
made
you're
that
right.
choice.
Yeah. I think you're right. The Mark character is
He doesn't care.
Yeah, doesn't care, doesn't get anything. Like, gets what he wants by just not having to, to deal with it.
Yeah. Like, he didn't have to decide.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what he wanted at the end.
Oh, my God. Fuck him.
Yeah. He was like the worst type of person.
Yeah, and the brother also was really bad,
He was odd.
Yeah, he was odd, but, like, he had this...
Oh, the opinions on, like, marriage.
And and just, like, was fine to lead people on.
Yeah.
And was all good with these things. And he gets married and then, like, leaves her, like, within 24 hours.
Yeah. That was funny.
Yeah, it is interesting, actually, what the movie is saying.
Yeah.
And maybe it is actually a total miscalculation on their part, and they don't really realize.
What do you think the movie's saying?
I mean, now I think the movie is, man, I don't know if it's saying much of anything. In some it feels like a movie they shot, and it kind of was. I mean. Because I think they were trying to make Katie's character annoying.
Sure, like nagging.
Yeah. And just just kind of annoying and
stick in the side.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, this is like but I think that all of these movies, like I do genuinely know people that are just like that. Yeah. And I know all like these it still all feels real.
Right.
So when I'm saying this, I'm also like talking about like it is good characterization.
Sure.
And then it almost feels like he gets exactly what he wants because like he doesn't have a nagging girlfriend anymore.
Right.
And now he can be free. The male spirit is no longer trapped.
Yeah.
He went through an odyssey to unhinge himself from the shackles. But
maybe that's the story.
Yeah, but then I it almost feels like what it's trying to say. If I'm going to just create something, is like don't tie yourself down, or like don't like be yourself, but it's in a bad way, I think.
But I kind of feel like it's about the preciousness of a relationship.
Oh no. And I mean, oh no, right? As in we're like speaking two different languages, which is beautiful and is the point of the podcast. But I'm realizing like, oh God, okay. Oh no, I'm off. I'm over here and you're on the football field. I'm on the baseball field.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, yeah, I guess that's like what the story's saying. Like, I guess the narrative actions are saying what you're saying. But I think from what, like, thematically, what each scene is trying to convey is like, I don't know, like, I feel like he was trying to figure out if she was special to him or not. And like marriage, like that whole conversation with him and his dad, to me, defined the movie in terms of like
his real dad.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Which makes sense. Yeah. Like this search of like knowing, like, given that marriage is important, does this partner I'm with now convey the same meaning that this institution upholds, you know? And I think he was trying to figure that out for himself, like, this whole time. And even trying to, like, be okay with the decision of breaking up.
Yeah.
I think was a big thing. And then all of that other shit, like the brother and the chair, like all these things are just avenues to prod him out of that question, if that makes sense. Like, what is the most important thing to you? Mm-hmm. Is it her? Is it, XYZ?
What's the other stuff? Her or
like his brother, the chair, his dad.
Yeah.
Like maintaining, peace with people. Yeah. I don't know. Keeping the trip going. Like these narrative devices are like the tools that are allowing him to think through this idea of like him and her, you know, as a couple and stuff.
Yeah. Part of me wishes they like almost had that conversation with the dad earlier in the film, so that it felt like that was kind of framing it, because it did kind of feel like
it needed something in the beginning.
Yeah, it feels because it felt like
a slap down.
Yeah, and I mean maybe that's just kind of like the genre's a little, you know, like it is just like a let's start shooting.
Yeah.
Let's get moving.
Right.
And let's start late, which I do like movies that start late. You know, we didn't like. They did have. That was the one where she like runs out of the house, or the apartment, right away, right?
Yeah.
Or runs out the phone. There's like, because he's on. They're like having dinner together, and he's like on his phone.
Yeah.
And then like she just leaves.
Yeah. Oh god.
And that was a bad start. It was a bad start. Not. I feel like Mumblecore just it did something where you just can't critique it in some ways, in my opinion. Like, it's just like, it just is.
Yeah.
So when I say something bad, it's just like, oh my God, this is just like insane way for a character to act.
Yeah.
But it also feels really real. But that whole thing was just like, oh no, this is really toxic.
Like, if that's the beginning of the movie, it's only getting worse from here, right? Like, this isn't a happy ending sort of movie. Yeah, when that opening scene came on, I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
We're in for one.
Yeah, this is going to be rough. Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. I feel like Jay and Mark Duplass, they've done a lot of stuff since then.
And when I talk to people about Mumblecore, their name comes up.
Yeah.
They're certainly known for being a part of the early part of this genre.
Yeah. And Mark's acted in a lot of stuff. There's this one great movie called The One I Loved, which is fucking, like, I guess supernatural romantic drama.
We found your genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With like alternate personalities and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. Anyways.
Right on. Well,
moving along.
Let's move along.
Yeah. We kind of mentioned it before, but this is Andrew Bujalski's second film. Also shot on film, mentioned black and white. It's called Mutual Appreciation, screened at the 2005 South by with Puffy Chair and Joe Swanberg's movie. Yeah. I mean, we've said a lot about this movie.
Yeah, it is the perfection of the form.
Yeah.
It is... How long is it? It's 110 minutes, but
which is long for Mumblecore.
Which is long for Mumblecore, but it doesn't feel long.
Yeah, it flies by.
I thought it was just so good that it just did everything right. And quality wise, looking at the picture, it is beautiful.
Yeah, and
I highly recommend watching it in really high fidelity because it's
film.
So good.
Yeah.
And it's always nice to kind of appreciate that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You have another asshole man in this one too. It's just like all of the men, maybe nights. I was gonna say nights and weekends, but
he's still an asshole.
Yeah, like it's just like, god damn, like
in the end, you're like, what? You're just using her.
Yeah, are you talking about nights and weekends?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, we got to talk about that. These movies just hit like any person that has gone through relationships and has gone through like that classic young love and loss that we all go through. They hit home. It might even hit home more as a nostalgia trip as well. Just be like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what it feels like to be young, to be awkward,
figuring yourself out and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this guy, he's like a bandless, musician. So even in that, he is kind of like wandering. He has no direction in his life. Mm-hmm. And then because of that, you get to see a lot of his like shitty sides of like how he treats people and uses people and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's like trying to think about what the intention of the director is. What do you think Bujalski is saying with this, especially with the way it ends, which it like ends in like a almost a relationship collapsing, but reforming, because there's like a love triangle in a way, or at least the Andrew Bujalski, who stars in both of these films, Funny Haha and this.
Yeah.
Andrew Bujalski's girlfriend, I think they're just boyfriend, girlfriend, begins to fall for our lead musician character. And, or at least like has like some reservations about her relationship, and is just like being honest about how she feels, which was like, oh my God, it's so healthy. Oh my God, saying these things is great.
Yeah.
But that is taken advantage of by our leading character.
Yeah.
And then it ends with like a acknowledgement of the fact, but then a like an okay, I see you, you see me sort of ceasefire in a way, but not in like such a violent way, but like just in like a, we understand each other and relationships are complicated, and let's see what happens next. Not that I think they're going to be in like a open relationship necessarily.
Yeah.
But I was just like, what? Yeah, and maybe you already have thoughts on some other tangent, but I am just curious about like what Andrew Bujalski was trying to say with this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like his movies, more than the other filmmakers, feel more, I guess, like nuanced.
It certainly feels like there doesn't necessarily have to be a
yeah thing. I'm trying to think, because like it makes me feel like, it makes me think of the elusiveness of Frances Ha, and like how for me it was so hard to try to define this film. Like I feel like it's doing so many different things that like I don't know how to really pin it down. Like his movies, I don't know, when I think about his movie, I think about the formal aspects. I can't remember the story like at all. I just remember like the feeling of it, the like kind of meanderingness of the character. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to respond to
that. I mean the certainly the core that feels like it goes through is Andrew Bujalski's girlfriend kind of falling for our lead character. Like there is like because she is like pretty close to the beginning asked to be his manager. Like cuz he's starting up a band again. He's kind of at a low point in his life.
Yeah.
And is starting up anew, and she's been a fan of his and has always kind of like been a cheerleader of his. And there's like a closeness in like this really low part, or like this recreation of himself. And
he's not just a correct.
Yeah.
I don't think he's actually the protagonist.
Oh.
Right. Bujalski.
Bujalski isn't. Yeah, no.
Yeah. It's
Justin Rice.
Justin Rice, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I just only have been naming, but so the leading character and so we'll say Justin Rice's character and Rachel Clift.
Yeah.
Her character, who is Andrew Bujalski's character's girlfriend. It feels like it has a lot to do with them kind of like orbiting around each other,
right,
in a very mumblecore way, which has all of these other things kind of falling on top of it. And
wait, I remember now. The group hug.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the end.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And it's so interesting, and then that's the very end of the movie.
I guess there's like no story.
That's how this film. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like it.
It was just like a summarization of like this type of character. Like there's almost no change with these people too, right? Like they're just kind of like going through their lives, and that was kind of like the non-ending for the film. It was like, okay, we have to wrap it up somehow, so let's just group hug together.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because mumblecore isn't going to have anyone shouting at each other. Like
this isn't shouting core.
Yeah, this is like there's not going to be any big conflict resolution that finds the characters at odds or anything like that. Right. Because even when Rachel Cliff's character is talking to Andrew Bujalski, and they're obviously a couple, and relays to Andrew Bujalski's character like, hey, I kind of have feelings. I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
We laid in bed together or whatever, and maybe they kissed. I don't remember. But he even handles it in such a healthy way, or maybe it isn't healthy because you don't really know what he's saying.
Yeah.
But at least it's in a shows what I like. Me saying non-confrontational and saying that's the right way isn't necessarily true.
Right.
But it is a very non-confrontational way of handling it. And just kind of coming at it from a place of understanding, or at least in performance.
Right.
And then it almost feels like, knowing that Justin Rice's character and even Rachel Clift being like, hey, these are feelings and they're real, and it like almost like relationships are like a force of nature, and even attraction is a force of nature. And what can you really do but exist with it? And like, can you really fight it? That's kind of what I kind of got at the end, was like, who are we to try to understand it, define it? It is what it is, and I want to live my life, and you're going to do you. I don't know.
Sure. I feel like that's a lot of the Mumblecore is like reaching a level of maturity.
That certainly is what all of them the first three we've talked about. It feels like by the end they are trying to say the character's more mature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Do I think they are? No. Absolutely not. Like,
but you would hope that they are.
What these characters don't realize is like they're still in their 20s. They're still dumb.
They're still gonna fuck up.
Like, there still is so much to learn.
Yeah.
And when you're in your 20s, and I bet people look at someone in their 30s like me and think the same thing, and I would agree with that. And it's hard to separate your thing, and I think these movies do.
Yeah.
Like, the characters think they're more mature, but there's just no way. Yeah, they're just like, you just look and you're like, wow, that was bad. That was a really bad decision. Don't think that's healthy. Hopefully things get better for you.
Yeah. Speaking of bad decisions,
are we going to the next one?
Yeah, we could talk about nights and weekends, huh?
Oh, this one hurt the most.
Yeah.
And I think Greta Gerwig just does such a great job of making me feel so like she just played, like, it reminded me of oh my god, Mescal in
Aftersun.
In Aftersun, of just like,
get out of there, kid.
Yeah, it's just, it hurts so bad, and they can't say how they're feeling at all. Like, they are trapped in a prison.
Yeah, especially at the end.
Yeah, and it's just,
oh my god.
Oh, yeah.
Like when she's following him to like all his work stuff.
Yeah,
and you're like, why are you doing this?
Because she also doesn't have like an off switch.
Yeah,
and she doesn't know like that she is causing her own unhappiness in a way.
Yeah,
like Joe Swanberg's character is not going to change.
Right.
There's no changing for him.
He's just rolling through.
And I think that a lot of the male characters in all of these are just rolling through, and thank God there's a woman here.
Yeah.
To fill like, some void
my
for me.
shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And to kind of throw this on them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And definitely feel that with this.
Yeah.
And yeah. Just Greta Gerwig's like screaming alone scene, and she doesn't even make a sound, does she? Like, it's just like, I'm trying to remember that scene. I think she was like sitting in her room, or I think she just is like
into the pillow.
Yeah, it was something like that, but it was very reminiscent of Mescal's character doing crying. That in Aftersun. Yeah, and it's just like, oh my god, it's just, I feel like I've had depression, and I feel like I've been in that state where it's just like it's terrible.
Yeah.
And you don't understand it.
And you don't know how to get out of it.
And you don't know how to get out of it. Yeah. And there is an out, but someone else needs to show you that life is better in a lot of ways.
Right.
Because she is trapped in a prison of Joe Swanberg's making in a lot of ways. And her own. Whatever whatever life she's had. I love that it's a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
I think that makes her a really great premise. I like that a lot.
That conflict. Yeah.
It's great. And as someone who had a long distance relationship in college, it felt very true to just how you grow up and you grow apart, but you kind of have to get back together and act like everything's the same.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy I was able to figure that out sooner rather than later.
Sure.
But it's still that's a tough place to be in. Not saying all long distance relationships are bad or anything like that, but certainly
there's potential for that to happen.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, because things need to, and I would be curious if Greta Gerwig's character was happier when we don't get to see her live a life without
Joe Swanberg.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thought that I hadn't really considered, is it really what, I imagine she still has that awkward self, but just the power his character has over her is insane.
Yeah, she's definitely, I think you said orbiting. I think that's a great verb, because every time he's there, it feels like she's changing herself for that.
Yeah.
Interesting ways.
Yeah, he is not orbiting her, obviously.
Right.
She is absolutely orbiting him.
Right. Like her pretending to have her work on her laptop before he comes over and doing all these things to make her look busy and stuff. It's like, girl, why are you doing that? You're doing too much for this shitty man who doesn't care about you. And it's the part where they're doing the photo shoot and the photographer's calling them boyfriend girlfriend and they're just playing along, and I'm oh man, what is this?
And Joe Swanberg's character has no problem with this.
Yeah, he's
this is great. This is no sweat off my back.
Yeah,
and it is like a meteor shower on her. It just feels like it is tearing her apart.
Right, because is this real?
Yeah, is
this just pretend for the thing?
And it's just one of those things. I think it's just a toxic masculine trait.
Yeah,
is just this ability to be I'm not even gonna think about her and her feelings,
right,
or anything like that.
This is just fun.
That's her problem. That's not my problem. I'm just doing my thing. And this movie has that as fun as spades.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, the whole focus of it is I'm curious how much of this reflects their actual relationship.
Yeah.
Not to put too much into that, but
I hope to God not much.
I mean, I feel like I project a lot maybe into it, but I feel like maybe there is, because I don't know. I feel like there's an interesting timeline of
psychoanalyst Kevin over here and celebrity psychoanalyst coming in hot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Finish your thought.
Yeah, just the timeline of Nights and Weekends to Greenberg to Mistress America to Frances Ha, and with everything,
and Noah Baumbach, the person we're kind of alluding to.
Yeah, there's something that's going on here that I'm I just feel like there's something there.
We can't ignore. Obviously, it's a futile exercise in some ways to even try to imagine it until something comes out.
But it is a lens to look at it through.
And it is real. Not only is it a lens to look at, that is actually what happened. We can look at the facts. And there are absolutely things happening behind the scenes.
Sure.
We just don't know how big, how small, how mature people were, how immature. True. That ends up being the ultimate question. And that is something that's just how can you possibly answer that? But it is an interesting lens to look through.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I guess just in general, right? Looking at how... Because Gerwig, she co-directed this and then co-wrote Frances Ha. So in both instances, she is in collaboration with the director.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's just an interesting comparison in the way Noah Baumbach builds a Greta Gerwig character and the way Joe Swanberg builds a Greta Gerwig character, and how each person is seeing her as a person, and then how that translates to the movie, right? Because Frances Ha, as depressing and lonely as that movie is, it's fun and it's light and it's entertaining.
Yeah.
And it's fun to be around, which I think encapsulates more of what Greta Gerwig's real personality is than this movie, which feels dark and like really fucked up.
Yeah.
Like some of the feeling of the shots, like imposing isolation or like really crazy close-ups or like breaking body parts into like really gaudy compositions that are even on just a digital camera. It's like the bodies are built kind of bulky in the frame, if that makes sense. The way they compose certain things, they juxtapose them, they'll set them across each other on opposite sides of the frame. I don't know, there's just like this tension and brutalism, I guess, within the film's like construction that I just felt like very dirty and like
I think something that adds to that is that I don't think Greta Gerwig's character was happy once.
Yeah,
like
in the
genuinely
film.
happy in the entire film. And to have like a main character not be happy the whole time.
That's depressing.
Yes.
She felt like an anxiety attack like the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah, which is, that's disheartening.
Yeah. It still is a good watch, but it is just like, damn.
It's, I mean,
exactly.
Nothing
like,
to say about its quality, but just the characterizations are very strong and like putrid, I would say. Like they stink.
Yeah.
Versus Frances Ha, which feels flowery and like, beautiful.
Nice. And what do you think is, because you kind of like alluded to like Noah Baumbach's like way he has a hand maybe in representing Greta Gerwig's characters. How is she in Frances Ha? It's been a while since I've seen it. So it's just like a more full-fledged individual.
Yeah, it just feels like more of a person.
Yeah.
And like,
because she feels like an object in this. I guess maybe that's even another way to think about it too. Is there's very objectification.
Yeah, it just feels like this person was in a shitty toxic relationship, and like the characterization of Greta Gerwig is that, right? Like timid, shut down, closed off, anxious, unable to move in the world, like lacking confidence. And then Frances Ha is like the complete opposite of that. Is like being in a relationship where you feel free and freedom to be yourself, like flourishing, like when you are happy, you explode, and like dancing and running in the street and like saying what's on your mind without thinking about what that means for you in the next moment. Like that is like you in a free relationship. You know what I mean? Like you being with someone who loves you for who you are, sort of a thing. You know what I mean? Like that's how I see Greta in Frances Ha, where it's like that closed, timid person is now like able to dance and like be themselves, sort of a thing. Like, I don't know, I just see so much of Baumbach's like perspective on her imbued into that movie, if that makes sense. Like, you can just tell he appreciates her as like a person more through the way that movie is made. Yeah, that's my kind of conclusion.
Nice.
Yeah, because I mean, to tie Mumblecore back to New Wave, like Frances Ha is like the New Wave Mumblecore movie, like combining those two things together into one thing. Yeah, which is like interesting. Like you get these two flavors put together. Like Gerwig obviously having the Mumblecore experience, and then Baumbach having more of a New Wave. Like one of his favorite movies is Julie Jim. And so having that spirit within Mumblecore, like, it just makes so much sense. Yeah. So to wrap it up, I kind of wanted to get into how Mumblecore still exists to this day, that because of its like accessibility to filmmakers, like people can still access this genre as a way to like get films made.
Yeah.
So when you look at like filmmakers today, you see a lot of people use mumblecore in their first sort of features. So Barry Jenkins did Medicine for Melancholy around the same time in 2009. You have the Safdie brothers doing a lot of work around the same era. And
I think Daddy Longlegs is considered that. Yeah.
Tiny Furniture. Lena Dunham is another like mumblecore person. And then they have this in the Wikipedia, but Damien Chazelle's first movie, Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, that has like mumblecore aspects to it. Also shot on 16mm black and white, which is interesting. That to me is like a new wave musical, which is cool.
Yeah,
you know, it's obviously a musical and it's like pushing in that direction. But when you look at the characters and like the dialogue scenes, it has like a mumblecore kind of aesthetic to it. So I feel like it speaks to mumblecore as an independent genre, in that it's like mumblecore almost acts as the Roger Corman of today, right? Of finding these young directors who eventually make bigger stuff like down the road. Sometimes they make more mumblecore later on, sometimes they don't. But I think it's an interesting way of like seeing the projection of certain filmmakers and their careers and stuff.
It also is just like a good excuse to start making a movie.
Yeah,
like,
just do it.
What are you? Yeah, what are you thinking? Why are you thinking so much about it?
Right. Like
just go and do it, and in a way, figure it out in editing. I imagine a lot of these movies were made in the edit bay.
Yeah,
you know, like because it does. They all have that quality of like. There's probably so much directing that goes in at that point, and there's magic to that too.
Yeah,
you know, of the kind of construction, like the really just get in the event, just go out, do it, and it is the most accessible way to make a movie.
Yeah, easily the most, right? Because it's just do it, even on your phone. Like just go and do it.
Audio quality really isn't that big of a deal either. Like you can really do it. I mean, Funny Haha was bad in audio quality. Like it was hard. Like some of the audio was tough to hear.
The puffy chair,
yeah. But it still was, you know.
Yeah.
That's what fit. Like it felt like it was a cheap student film, and that worked for it.
Yeah, and thank God for that, right? Because I think it was the Duplass. Someone said like, if it wasn't for reality TV, we wouldn't have the efficacy to think this is good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a really,
it allowed audiences to understand this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love the idea of like, it took like dumbing down the masses to make this a viable thing in a way. But I think dumbing down the masses is like, at least in terms of form, it got people used to like, okay, a movie can be told in this way.
Right.
Obviously, it's full of all of its unique little things and poisons.
Right. Because this, I mean, you could make the argument that mumblecore has always existed, you know.
Yeah.
In going back to like the 90s and even like new wave and stuff. So like, but it never reached like a mainstream sort of like movement or whatever. So I think you can point to mumblecore as like, oh, it can work. Like, or yeah, I don't know. Maybe it would just coincided with a lot of like societal stuff that allowed it to come to fruition.
Yeah. It was kind of the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Of
to be in.
Yep, exactly. Of video being on its rise.
Right.
And so it probably was inevitable not to like be like it wasn't a revolutionary act to do these sorts of things.
Yeah, because I can't imagine them sitting in a room and being like, well, reality TV is here, so let's make this movie now. Like it feels like a coincidence of like converging factors.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of cases, obviously Dogma 95 being one of those out, but I think in a lot of cases movements
tend to be like that.
Yeah. They just kind of blow up. People, right place, right time,
yeah.
have the motivation.
Yeah.
And this...
and it's almost like retroactively trying to define what that thing was. Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. That's what we're all doing, because they weren't thinking of it at the time.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Like in 2007, they had a mumblecore retrospective.
Insane.
Which is so like, no way. That's hilarious.
Before Francis Ha, that is really funny.
Right? Like so much came out before Nights and Weekends.
Yeah.
Like there was so much happening at that time. And yeah, we'll definitely revisit this.
Oh yeah.
You know.
That'll be a really cool part about this podcast is going back to some of these genres. Because there's still a lot more I want to know.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in the next generation filmmakers' first Mumblecore films.
Right. We should watch.
The Safdie brothers, I think, is a great example. Like we know them from all of these other things.
Yeah.
But I want to see kind of Mumblecore beginnings.
Right.
Like what does it look like to take this and use it?
Because you could looking at Barry Jenkins' first movie, you could see where he's falling into what becomes Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk. But it's obviously not there yet.
Yeah.
But he's figuring it out. And you can see it in his style and stuff like that.
I think there's another category of just like directors' first films.
Yeah.
That I think is a really interesting because maybe a lot are Mumblecore.
Yeah.
That might just be kind of a given.
To some degree, it has to be, right?
Yeah.
Like 16 millimeter or digital cameras with your friends. Like that's probably most people's first movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And kind of experimenting on what the heck. What the heck the equipment is.
Yeah,
The form, the acting, like. I remember when I was making like student films, it was like, can we improvise?
Yeah.
The answer is usually no. Like that there's an art to that.
Yeah.
But that's
you
also
need a good actor
but that's also like an easy entrance point for people is like, we don't have to write it. Let's just go and talk.
Yeah. That's what my first student film was.
Yeah.
Was like we were in like a film studies class and then we made a movie like as a extracurricular sort of assignment. And none of us had ever made a movie or done anything before. And so we were like in the process of making it. And like we literally had 1 to 2 hours every week to like meet and make this thing.
Wow.
So we were like, okay, let's just like roughly shape a story and then on the day just figure it out together and improvise the whole thing. Like we discussed it and stuff, but like there was no script or anything. And yeah, it was like one of my favorite like projects I've made.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, because it feels like you just adding yourself into the thing. Yeah. I don't know. There's something interesting about like just I don't know. Just making it. Yeah. Like letting it become what it becomes, sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So Mumblecore.
Yep.
It's great. I can't wait to be back in Mumblecore Park.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember you talking about Viva sa vie in this way of like, oh, I just wanted to find the poetry of my real life, sort of a thing. Like, to me, this scratches that itch.
Oh, 100%.
In a lot of ways, it's like, oh, I can just make my life into a movie.
Yeah.
And make it seem cool. But yeah, I wonder like how difficult that must, or I just wonder what that process is like. Like, what makes a good Mumblecore movie, you know, aside from like these things that we talk about.
Exactly. A low budget does not mean good.
Yeah, exactly.
Improvised dialogue does not mean good.
Yeah.
Like there is still a real artistic capability that all of them are exercising.
Yeah. I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how do you shine shit? Like
yes.
You know, they're doing something to make this good in our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, I'm curious what that formula is or what that sort of process is.
Let's ask them.
Yeah.
Hey, Greta. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh God, I would shit my pants.
Yeah. We'd have to ask you to leave.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of the experiment with this genre too, was like, how do you make movies? Like, let's push that boundary. Because Swanberg, I think, mostly was known for pushing the boundaries of like improvisation. Like there's the one movie, Hannah Takes the Stairs, I believe, where he puts the whole crew and cast in a house and they stay there. And then every day they like eat breakfast together and talk about like what they're going to shoot. And then they like improvise the whole thing. Like together.
Wow.
Like they all live on the set and work on the set. And then, do all their things together. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's a fun like thing. Like the Altman kind of like build a world, have the gear, and then just let it play. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I really want to make a movie where you have like 5 main characters who are like, they have stories, they have like things that they must do, and then you put them into settings where you just have real people like in a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you just have cameras follow them around and stuff.
I love non-actors for that exact reason. I love things that incorporate non-actors. I think The Curse is like the most recent example of something I loved. And I think Nathan Fielder is really great. And obviously Benny Safdie was involved in this too. Yeah. Like of just like directing reality, like actual reality into cinema and cinematic language. Like that is, and I think there's something just so beautiful. And that's why I think those two as a pair, and I hope they make more things in the future. Because they were talking about how like Benny Safdie is always trying to make like cinema look like reality.
Yeah, he has that. Have you read his article?
No.
He has an interesting article. I'll send it to you.
And then Nathan Fielder does the opposite. He like turns reality into cinema. And so they were able to kind of meet in the middle.
Sure, yeah.
And find a way to make it work. And it has like, obviously it has Emma Stone and Nathan Fielder starring in it.
Right.
And so you have like this quality of like these really talented folks that can kind of exist in this space. And it's just all non-actors for the most part. Surrounding them.
Yeah.
Really, really great. And just another way to look at it.
Yeah. I found it. I'm going to send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the gold mine of film and television, like where those two worlds kind of meet and like the potential of what you can do with that. Yeah, because there is something interesting where reality TV and neorealism, there's something that happens there that could be interesting, like you know, as a film. And anyways, and I think when I think of the Safdie brothers, I think of like Cassavetes and Scorsese, and anyway, I'm thinking of that one Criterion video where the Safdie brothers are talking about the Martin Scorsese shorts with Ari Aster, and then there's that one short with that guy from Taxi Driver, and Marty is like in the short, and there's like clips of Martin doing like little hand movements to direct the camera mid shot. Like he'll like do this, and it like and then the camera pans over to the next character. Like he's directing in real time, like with the people. And I'm like, oh, that is like pure directing, where you are in the moment, but also controlling it at the same time. Yeah. You're like in it, but also dissociated from it. And still operating.
It's like a general on the battlefield sort of thing. It's like this bird's eye view, and although there's all these pieces down below, you see the big picture. And are predicting and moving and
the coach on the field sort of idea.
Exactly. Like the players can't see what's happening,
right?
Like because they are too in it, and that's the point of the characters and the players.
Yes.
And it's up to the director to kind of see the big picture and to just corral it just enough. And there you have varying degrees of that, with Robert Altman being probably the best. Yeah, one of the best in finding the middle ground.
Right.
Where like then you have these mumblecores which lean heavily into let's just see, let's let you improvise. But they still have a story.
I feel like Altman and mumblecore are similar.
Oh yeah.
I think they're more similar. Yeah. Right? Okay.
I mean, I was more like, I think Robert Altman does it better than Mumblecore does.
Yeah,
it's basically what I was saying was like,
I see, elevated version of this.
Yes. Like he has the mastery of the form of like, what's the right amount of improv? What's the right amount of letting
construction?
Yeah. Shortcuts being like such a great, I can't get it out of my head.
Oh my gosh.
How much I just loved that.
So good. Yeah.
And obviously that's a very story heavy thing. I mean, they come from short stories, so I'd be curious just what
the process of
what
that.
the process is. But I like Nashville for what it was too, and you can see how this all comes from Nashville and that kind of genre too, of just like things are happening.
Is Altman Mumblecore?
I mean, I would yes.
Because I mean, you can't hear shit in his movies
McCabe
either.
And Mrs. Miller, Jesus. It's just, I feel like it's just a more Hollywood Mumblecore.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's high budget Mumblecore.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's using the same principles, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times. Yeah. Just like with more shit.
Yeah, and why I appreciate it's like he had like from the things that I had read, like really wanted just to see what happens.
Right.
And I think that's really the art of the Altman.
Right. Is the reality, capturing cinematizing reality.
Yeah. And I think Mumblecore at its best does that too.
Yeah.
Even though I think it's an entry into let's make a cheap movie.
Yeah.
It can be this is it at its best.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like Bujalski more than the other people, is because he's like dedicated to the art form as like an elevated thing, regardless of the budget level. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, because I genuinely think improvisation is good and a tool, but I don't think it's like something to rely on in this thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Personal preference, but I just like the idea like Noah Baumbach is another filmmaker where like he is often mistaken as someone who uses improvisation, but all of his films are very scripted and very rehearsed. And so to get to that feeling, level of where people are confused about it, I want that. Like, I want to be able to recreate reality without reality involved, whatsoever. Yeah. Yeah.
You're sick.
Yeah.
You're twisted.
That's movies. That's movie magic to me.
That's movies.
Yeah. Is this real?
Yeah.
Like, was this with that movie that we the first thing that we shot and improvised, when we showed it to the class, someone was like, was this real? Like, did this actually happen?
Yeah.
We were like,
hey.
Boom, we got you.
Gotcha, suckers. Well, right on.
Yeah, anyways, we love Mumblecore.
Yeah, big fans.
Shout out Greta Gerwig.
Shout out Greta. Yeah. On the next episode, we speak to Greta Gerwig about Mumblecore histories. Yeah. We get the dirt on what was really going on nights and weekends.
So explain your relationship with Joe Swanberg.
Exactly. All right, folks.
All right. Checking out.
Bye-bye. That's right. Wind Reel and Print is a podcast by Salad Brain Productions. You can find us online on Instagram at Wind Reel and Print Pod. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like the show, leave a rating and review. We'll see you next time.